Svetski. And our next speaker, he's from Australia. He's an entrepreneur, but he's also a well-known writer and researcher into Bitcoin. And he actually says that Austrian economics is impossible without Bitcoin. Please, Aleksandar, stage is yours.
Thanks, Moritz. Can everyone hear me through this? Because I can't hear myself. Okay, fantastic. That's going to be a very hard act to follow. That was really, really good. That's been my favorite talk of the day. All right. We're running my Apple thing, so we're going to see if this actually works. Okay, it does work. So that's me. Some of you might have seen me on Twitter. That was me before I discovered Bitcoin, and now I have no hair. So, this is what happens to you. No, I'm joking. Actually, last night I was shaving, and then as I started cutting my hair, I realized that I was still on the shaving thing, so I ended up cutting it too short because I was thinking about Bitcoin. So maybe this does happen. So I'm on Twitter, on Medium, I write a lot of stuff on there, and I'm probably known as one of the more toxic Bitcoiners, as the vernacular has come to be. But my talk today. It popped up in my head. I was talking to Daniel a couple weeks ago, and I didn't realize this event was on at this point in time. And I said, hey, look, I'm in Europe. Maybe I can come around. He said, what do you want to talk about? I said, I don't know. How about Austrian economics doesn't work without Bitcoin? He was like, that's a great topic. And I was like, okay, now I need to come up with something. So I came up with this on the way here. And basically, I'm not Austrian. I'm not an Austrian economist either, but I like to think, I've got a sort of an engineering background and an entrepreneurial background. I've always been in business. I have famously never had a job except for one pizza delivery job for 2 weeks, and I got fired because I crashed the car twice. So since then, that was when I was 16, I've never worked for anybody else. I've always worked for myself, and at times have been very successful, and at times have been catastrophically disastrous in my results. But, my experiences have led me to believe that the best way to learn, to grow, to do things in this world is to be allowed to freely do those things. And over time, I've developed a belief in just this idea of the freedom of choice that people should have in order for society to function properly. So, I haven't done too much reading per se on Austrian economics outside of, I was just reading Henry Hazlitt's book, and it just, for some reason, all of that stuff just fundamentally makes sense to me from a first principles basis. It's just very natural in its ethos. So I've kind of broken down what I think the basic pillars are of Austrian economics as a school of thought, or if we call it natural economics, so apologies to any Austrians here, but if we look at it as a school of thought and think about it as this kind of free market, price-driven capitalism, and the definition of capitalism being the idea that you can accumulate wealth, accumulate capital, which is a function of the work and value you add into society. That's sort of like the umbrella of what I believe it represents. And then, as subsets to that, you've got this idea of individual subjective action. What we were talking about before, means and ends and the ability to pick those things yourself. Tastes and preferences, which is, related to your decision about time preferences and when you may want to do things and why you may want to do them, how you value them at different points in time. Opportunity costs, in other words, picking what to do and when and why, and that being, a choice for yourself. Consumer sovereignty, again, which is very much related to that as another pillar, is this idea that the consumer can choose what the hell they should want to buy and what they shouldn't want to buy. That leading into this concept of political individualism. When economics as a system is coercive, it tends to tighten the noose around people's ability to have free choice around the political views. And then, the final thing is this, probably one of my favorite elements of the whole Austrian economics school of thought is the, this non-interventionist take it has, particularly with, whether it's monetary policy or just messing around with markets. You don't touch something that's complex without having some sort of ramification afterwards that you can't quantify when you mess with it. So, I say that over the last couple hundred years in particular, the Keynesians have won because their model relied upon someone playing with the levers. And the most important lever being the base lever, which is money. And they were able to do that, and because fundamentally economics has grown up in a system where the monetary unit or the rules and all of that sort of stuff have ended up being concentrated in some way, shape, or form. Whether it was concentrated, back in the day when central banks weren't independent, and now apparently that they're independent, it's still being, the levers are still being pulled by someone at the end of the day. And the Austrians have thus far lost because their model was based upon nobody touching the levers, or as few people as possible touching the levers. But the ability to do that has not existed up until now. We cannot, my argument in this thing is that, again, to date, the Austrian Economics school of thought has been theoretical in nature because you cannot apply free market theories in the wild whilst the actual resource through which we measure markets, economics, and society is controlled by some form of central party. At the end of the day, whether through the issuance of fiat money, whether through, what we heard earlier about legal tender laws and things like that, that by very definition is a form of control of the unit through which we measure society, markets, economics, and all of that sort of stuff. So it's run by someone. And on top of that, doing that and remaining and completely unknown variable. I don't think anybody on the face of the planet actually knows how much money there is out there, how much assets are valued at, what derivative. Nobody's got any clue. Like it's all just sort of out somewhere, and we've got all these random estimates about what we're working with. So we're basically running blind in a system that supposedly has, the levers being pulled by, call it the few, despite being apparently independent. And what I would argue is that to date, there has been no good object or good in existence throughout the entire history. Gold tried but failed. The way I like to look at gold is it was like the humanity's sort of little test run. We had this yellow shiny metal that we were able to basically form the basis of sound economic thought with, but it was never going to work because over time, being a physical object by nature and the difficulty of verifying, the difficulty of actually scaling it as a thing, always trends towards concentration because of economies of scale and things that were discussed earlier by other speakers. And what that means is we always end up back to the same point of some sort of crony capitalist system that is run by the few and claimed to be independent. So I would argue there's never been something in history with a verifiably fixed supply of units that anybody can verify really cheaply, which has all of the core attributes of money. I heard Bitcoin earlier being related to, what was it, like record labels that are limited and stuff like that. I don't know about you, but I've never tried to send a record label through my mobile phone to somebody on the other side of the planet instantaneously. So I don't think that really works. So I don't know if that's a very valid comparison for Bitcoin. So I would say that it's got all of the attributes of money, but it's got all of the attributes of a sound economic monetary unit as well. And because it's emergent, the different attributes are going to be stronger at different points in time as it grows. Just like, whenever I give the argument, whenever somebody asks me about, why doesn't Bitcoin get used as a more broadly accepted medium of exchange today? It's the same reason why I would say that maybe 5,000 years ago, 6,000 years ago, when the first person discovered this yellow shiny rock on the ground and went to buy a chicken from, the guy who's selling chickens in the village, and said, "I've got this yellow shiny rock. Can I have a chicken?" And he looks at him, he's like, "What do we do with the chicken? Give me, we use shells here, you idiot. Like, what the hell is this yellow shiny rock? Can I wear it? Can I eat it? Can I cook it? Can I drink it? No, I can't. So I don't want to use that." But if that person who found the yellow shiny rock was able to hold it for long enough, knowing that over time the collective consensus of society would converge upon using that yellow shiny metal as a better representation of their work, time, and energy, which is the definition of money, then that person would have been really wealthy. That yellow shiny rock would have not bought the chicken, it would have bought the entire country or bit of land or whatever. So that's what's happening with Bitcoin in real time. The only thing is it's not going to take 5,000 years. It's probably going to take 50, 100, 200 years. And it ain't going to take 5 or 10 years like some idiots might want you to believe and try and sell you some sort of, I'm going to swear for the first time, I'm sorry, I'm just going to say shitcoin. Okay, so if someone trying to sell you something else. So they're the areas that I think we've been weak. So as a result, we've never had the benefit. So I don't believe we've ever really truly lived in a truly free market capitalist society. We may have had periods of that when institutions have changed and they've said, all right, now we're going to do things right. But over time, everything concentrates again because we haven't had a truly free money that people can verify and that is uncensorable, uninflatable, unconfiscatable, and all of those things. So we've never had the benefit of true, long-term, uninhibited capitalism where real wealth can be created and accumulated through the increased productive capacity of the constituents of society, i.e. its people. We've never had that. So here comes Bitcoin, this emergent money. We're seeing this money come from nothing and evolve into something. And of course that process is going to be volatile. It's, if we went and decreed Bitcoin's value tomorrow, we would defeat the purpose of it being a free market money. So it's got to evolve on its own. It's got to be something that the market decides what the hell a asset or a unit of account or a form of money is going to be worth to me. And the fact that people's interpretation or understanding of what this thing is not going to be equal at any point in time is reflected in this volatility and this price. This is going to take time to discover. It's going to take time for the world to understand. There's 60 people in here. There's another, million people in Vienna who aren't in this room who have no idea what the hell we're talking about here. And they're going to come later in the piece, after more and more people come into the fold. So Bitcoin, I like to say, is the only form of money that is 100% free from inflation. We know that. From confiscation. Now, confiscation in the sense that when you hold your private keys and you know what they are, or your seed phrase, unless someone, puts a gun to your head. But that's not necessarily confiscation in the same sense of fiat type confiscation, which is if you have it in the bank and then they just want to not let you access the bank. That's a different story. I've actually had that happen because I'm a citizen of a Balkan nation as well, and dealing with banking over there, you start to learn that a lot of this stuff about faster payments and all of this shiny stuff that some European countries are working with doesn't actually extend very far outside of the system. It's the only form of money that's also 100% free from censorship. So Bitcoin doesn't give a crap what you are. You could be a person, a chair, a bag, a cat, doesn't matter. All it cares is that something signs the transaction. That is powerful. If the function of money is supposed to be a tool that allows society to increase in complexity, so it allows us to abstract our ability to interact with other individuals that we don't know or trust, money needs to be censorship resistant. You should be able to trade with anyone. This is why I have a real big problem with KYC and AML, because it defeats the purpose of what money is supposed to do. Money is supposed to allow you to transact or trade with someone that you don't know. You don't have to know your customer. You don't have to know everybody in order to participate in a free economy. So I think KYC and AML, just for the record, is the stupidest idea on the face of the planet. And it's kind of moving us back to, we're seeing a regression in the world. We're moving away from, what money was supposed to do, which is deranged. Bitcoin is also, as a money, free from concentration, because you don't have the same Cantillon effect. No one party, no one individual, no one independent central bank has the right to create it. It is a predetermined supply schedule that any one of us can go and verify, and that's game, set, match. You can't change it. You want to change it, you'll be one of those little fishes swimming by yourself, maybe with a few numpties following you along. And it's also free from manipulation. So if you want to go and manipulate it, go ahead, but you're going to be on a different network. You're going to fork away. Bitcoin's, the cause of a lot of the confusion around Bitcoin is, all of the fact that it's open source and that people can go and copy it and create their own version. So that source of confusion is also the source of its greatest strength, which is, it is free and open for anybody to do what the hell they want to do with it. But guess what? The economic momentum, the economic mass is all around those core set of rules that the collective that are associated with that unit are behind. That's where the mass is. So if you want to go ahead and create your own one, like I can go and create Bitcoin Alex's version, or maybe I'll call it Bitcoin Svetski's version, so I have my own BSV. You know, I don't think anyone's going to follow me. You know, I might be, you know, partially good looking maybe, and things like that, but, you know, maybe 5 idiots will come with me. But, you know, the fact of the matter is we're not going to move that economic momentum somewhere else, and that's one of Bitcoin's most powerful things, which people think is a flaw, but it's a benefit. So the thesis is really simple. Bitcoin is a reinvention of money first with payments built in. That's really, really unique, because then it performs the definition of money as a medium of exchange from day one. Like, a lot of people say, oh yeah, Bitcoin's not used as a medium of exchange broadly and all this sort of stuff. It doesn't matter. The fact that the function is there and it's native to it means that it's a better medium of exchange than anything else. You can exchange Bitcoin easier than anything else on the planet. I don't care what anybody says. I can send somebody Bitcoin in freaking Antarctica right now, and I don't have to go through anything. So it is a far superior medium of exchange, but it's also got all of the other attributes that we want for money. Now, finance and all of the other complexity that we've built over the last couple hundred years of the development of modern society will come after that, but guess what? It's going to be built on a much better foundation, one that we can audit and one that we know what the total supply of is. And that's when we'll see real economic growth. That's when we'll see productivity, value adding, you know, people doing interesting things and being rewarded for them effectively by the market. We'll be able to see that in ways that we've never been able to see before, because the system is always concentrated and we've created distortions in the system because things haven't been fundamentally free. So yeah, the result is a free market money that enables real Austrian economics and moves it from being largely theoretical to being practical in the world. I don't think Austrian economics was ever going to be practical without an invention like Bitcoin. So one last little bit here about you know, a comparison between today's world and a comparison to what a Bitcoin economic system would look like. In today's world, there's, you know, a couple of ways to amass more value. You know, add more value, you produce more, you do more work. That's great. You can go and directly steal, you know, and that's frowned upon by society because we have some property rights. Or you can do the smart thing today, which is you can indirectly steal. You know, whether it's through, you know, we can argue about taxes, whether it's through inflation, whether it's through, you know, whatever other fancy, you know, mechanisms we have with modern day economics, you know, but you can indirectly steal. And you know what? Most people don't notice it because guess what? It's only 1.3% per year and no one really notices. So, you know, you can slowly amass wealth for yourself at the expense of everyone else. In a Bitcoin world, you only have two ways. You either add more value, produce more, do work, or you directly steal. And the solution, obviously, to the directly steal part is we collectively, as a society, have good private property rights, so that you know, stealing from somebody's frowned upon. So that you know, that moves into creating a legal solution or a collective solution around that. So I think I'm at the end here. I can't remember how many slides I put on this thing. So what really matters here is, you know, and this kind of ties into the earlier talk about, you know, the total amount of money doesn't matter. And, you know, I always get asked this question. It's like, oh, why did Satoshi pick 21 million Bitcoin? I was like, oh, he could have picked 1 million. Doesn't matter. He could have picked 10 million. Who really cares? You know, no one. I don't think we're ever going to know the reason behind 21 million specifically. But the fact that it's capped, the fact that it's fixed, is the most important aspect of Bitcoin. And for a modern economy or for a complex economy to function, and for a fixed supply type of money to function, it needs two things. Number one, it needs to be infinitely divisible. And you know, the only thing that can be infinitely divisible that's fixed is something that's digital, fundamentally. Like, you can, you know, if you try to do that with a physical object, there's only so far you can shave it down, right? So I always like to say to people, Bitcoin's got this interesting attribute, which is if we look at, like, let's use US dollars for an example. We've got dollars and we've got cents, right? And we fix the cents. This, you know, 1 cent in US dollar terms is the lowest we can go. But on the upside, we can just print as much as we want. And what that does is it devalues the cent that you have. Whereas with Bitcoin, you fix the top. And then you can divide as much as you want. We already know about, or many of us may know about Satoshis as the cents equivalent of Bitcoin, which is 100 million sats. You can go to mini sats, microsats, nanosats, pi sats, whatever the hell it's called. You can just divide all the way through. It doesn't matter. And that doesn't devalue anybody else in terms of what they're holding. It's another nice analogy I like to think of is, we've got so much land on this planet, so the more wealth or the more productivity we create, and the greater we value that land, we can cut it up, but you just can't print more land, right? So this fixed supply is only functional if the money is infinitely divisible, which Bitcoin is, and the total supply is easily auditable and verifiable. And that's incredibly important. This is a thing that a lot of the crypto monkeys and Bcash morons and BSV idiots and the big blockers and all those people will never understand, have never understood when they've tried to create bloated, fat, big block blockchains where you undermine the ability for somebody to cheaply verify. I heard, and I forgot the gentleman's name, the central banker guy, talk earlier about the ECB being better than the Federal Reserve because it's got 27 member states who all need to vote on the independence, blah, blah, blah. I would argue that Libra is better because they've got like 50 members, and they could be independent too. But, Bitcoin's got 100,000 members. So if we're talking about numbers here, Bitcoin's got the strongest monetary policy because it ain't going to change because you can't get 100,000 people to agree on anything. You can't get, 100 people to agree on anything these days. But, that allows us to have the ultimate auditability and verifiability. It's something that we just can't get with anything else. You can't get it with fiat. You can't get it with gold. I used to know a guy who used to sell people gold, and it was tungsten. Smart guy. And no one's ever going to know. They're never going to find out. So you just don't have that level of verifiability and auditability. So I argue that Bitcoin's the only thing that exists that can deliver this, and its process of evolution has picked up so much momentum. There is nothing on the planet that's going to stop it now. If anyone wanted to stop Bitcoin, we had a chance 4 or 5 years ago. Sorry, not we, because I'm on the other side of this equation. But there was a chance 4 or 5 years ago. There ain't no chance anymore. I don't care what anybody does. This thing has so much momentum. It's so hungry for resources. Anything that gets thrown at it, it's like a black hole. It just sucks it in, and it gets stronger. So I would hate to be on the against side of Bitcoin at this point in time in history. So I wonder if this is the end of my thing because my clicker seems to have stopped working. Am I dead? Okay. If you ever want to find out more about some of the stuff I'm doing, I wrote this cool thing called the Bitcoin Times. It started off, I was giving a talk about a year and a half or two ago. I can't remember when it was, which came off the back of a talk that I did earlier. So I run a company called Amber where we help people dollar cost average into Bitcoin. I got invited to do a talk at this event where a bunch of people were selling ICOs. And I got up and I beat the crap out of ICOs, and I cost half the room probably $20 million in funding, and I saved the other half of the room probably $21 million in lost money. So anyway, those guys made the mistake of inviting me a second time at a blockchain conference, and I bashed up blockchain. And that's how the Bitcoin Times started. I had a 30-minute talk which turned into a 20,000-word dissertation. And it turned into just some long-form content. So if you want to look it up, you can. It's just long-form essays. It's free content. But the latest one we did with Dan Held, with Nick Carter, with Gigi, with a bunch of really, really intelligent people. And we take, the premise is to just write really long-form, Lindy compatible, let's call it, content that'll stand the test of time that people can read for a long time to come. So check that out. I'm also, like I said, co-founder of Amber, which is an app for DCA, and we're coming into Europe. And then, I hope that one day we can sort of, provide people all of the financial services that they get today, but, do that all built off a basis, of something like Bitcoin. So, I think that's my thing. So I don't know if we've got time for questions or not. Oh, let's not put this video on because that's got a lot of swearing in it. All right. Thank you very much for your time.
Perfect. Thank you very much. One question? I think we have time for one question. Is there one question here? Wait, I have a microphone for you.
I've got two. Is it okay?
Shoot.
One is a bit more technical. You said you want to do sub-Satoshi payments or like nano Satoshi. I know how it works in Lightning. What do you mean by that?
Look, I don't even know if that's a technical possibility at this stage. But I don't see why we won't be able to do that in the future. Should Bitcoin be valuable enough, and should intermediaries of some form that have some sort of verifiability in terms of how much total net assets they have, why they wouldn't be able to allow for sub-Satoshi payments. So I don't know how that's going to function per se, but the possibility exists, and it's something that we probably won't have to worry about for another 10 years anyway, because by the time we get to Satoshi cent parity, we've got a long time to go anyway.
Okay. And the second question is about your statement about KYC and AML. You said that it's the stupidest thing in the world. Can you explain that?
If you're motivated to get around the system, you get around the system anyway. So all we do is we just increase the complexity, the cost, and the headache of allowing people to participate in an economy. Simple as that. So for now, like me, for example, if I want to send money out of a Balkan region to any other country, the amount of nightmare that I have to go through just to send money, if I want to receive money to one of those, it's a freaking disaster. That should not be the case. So everyone has a fundamental right to sell a product and receive payment for it. Simple as that. And what we do by instituting these draconian, moronic KYC/AML laws, I'm sorry, I'm trying to be as polite as I can here, is we raise the difficulty for everybody in the bid to try and make it difficult for a couple people who are going to get around the system anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So I think it's the stupidest thing we can do. What we need to do is drop the barriers so that everybody has the right to transact, and what you'll end up doing is you'll have more economic productivity, prosperity, functionality, and all that sort of stuff, and that will drown out any of the supposed bad actors. Because, it's just, you make it harder for good people, and you make it no more difficult for quote-unquote bad people. And then also the definition of who bad people are is very subjective at the particular point in time that somebody says they're a bad person and they shouldn't be allowed to participate in economics.
Perfect. Thank you, Aleksandar.
Thanks, Moritz.